I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, watching the tide roll in. A high surf advisory along San Diego beaches. The surfers and beachgoers enjoying the sights and sounds of all that water.
And meat matters. I'm Peggy Pico. What you need to know about cancer and your diet, following an international report linking processed meat to cancer risk. Plus, how a shortage of farm workers is putting stress on San Diego's agricultural economy.
Heat, cold, weather, wet, rain, wind. It's very hard out here.
Helping the homeless before a massive El Niño hits San Diego, why many will stay on the streets and face off against the severe weather. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Climate change took center stage today for a San Diego visit by Governor Jerry Brown. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says the governor explains why the health of the economy depends on progress.
The governor addressed scientists gathered at UC San Diego. They were talking about strategies to eliminate the planet's carbon footprint. Brown says he won't stop fighting to reduce the use of petroleum in California, despite this year's setback in the legislature, lawmakers rejecting rules to reduce the use of gas by 50%. Brown doesn't believe lawmakers were right when they decided that that move would hurt the economy.
By the end of the century, the economy would be 23% lower because of climate change and global warming. So when we compare costs, we have to compare it against what? You know, against yesterday? No. Against the inevitable trend of where we're going.
Brown says the internal combustion engine's time is limited. He says electric cars are poised to overtake gas-powered vehicles in California, but better batteries are needed to make that happen.
Can battery technology advance to the point where it's cheaper, more efficient, lighter weight, so truly the electric car can outcompete, even without subsidies, the combustion engine.
Brown says California needs to continue to be a leader in the effort to combat global warming. He says that will keep the economy vibrant and encourage other states and countries to follow suit. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Surf's up, higher than average tides and swell arriving from a Pacific storm, bringing big waves to San Diego's coastline. We're under a high surf advisory this evening. Now, some folks admired the high tide at a breakfast buffet this morning. We are expecting conditions to peak tomorrow morning. The coastal flood advisories are posted until Thursday.
I pointed to my wife and I said, hey, where that lady's paddling out there, we're usually walking. So definitely surprised to see it this high and glad to see that people are out here enjoying it just like we are.
National Weather Service says tides in Southern California may reach nearly 7 feet. We're looking at return of more autumn-like weather, breezy conditions on the way for San Diego. Looking at 70s over the next few days by the beaches, 70s and 80s if you're in the Inland Valley areas, 70s and 60s in the mountains, and partly sunny and windy in the desert with 80s. Zero traffic deaths by 2025. That's the vision behind a San Diego City Council vote today. Now, various city departments will begin collaborating to improve safety along 8 of the city's most dangerous corridors. The task force could hasten simpler fixes like restripping lanes and increasing police traffic enforcement. Bigger fixes like buffered bike lanes would have to go through the budget process. Bicyclist Carol Lord rallied before today's meeting despite injuries she sustained in September.
Bottom line, with my accident, I was in the line. I was where we're supposed to be. I was in the bike lane. The car that hit me went right of traffic to pass it. And so they were in the bike lane when they hit me, which is kind of akin of a car going up on a sidewalk to hit a pedestrian.
Advocates estimate one person is killed or seriously injured every day while walking, biking, or driving in San Diego. We have an update nearly 4 years after a local nonprofit installed red meters downtown to collect donations for the homeless. Reporter Chris Young with our media partner iNewsSource tells us how much money has been raised and how it's being used.
Over the past 4 years, the Downtown San Diego Partnership has installed 21 donation stations throughout downtown. The stations look like red parking meters, and they accept coins and credit card payments. To date, the meters have collected nearly $10,000 for homeless services. That certainly isn't enough money to make a dent in the city's fight to end homelessness, but the nonprofit group says the meters are about more than just generating money.
They were never meant to be a huge money raiser. They were meant to be an awareness and an education tool.
Knight says most of the money generated by the donation meters has gone toward a program that helps reunite homeless people with their family members. Supporters of donation meters tout them as a valuable fundraising tool, but some critics argue that the meters are mainly used as a way to discourage people from giving to panhandlers and push the homeless out of downtown business districts. Knight says she's confident that the meters are worthwhile. She says the Downtown Partnership has plans to install 10 more meters downtown in the near future. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source reporter Chris Young.
Homeless advocates in the county are scrambling to help people ahead of this winter's El Niño, especially those living along flood-prone river areas. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy has the story.
Hello.
Brandon Smith and his outreach team from the nonprofit Alpha Project are scouring the San Diego riverbanks in Mission Valley for people in need.
Hello, anybody home?
They come across tents and makeshift dwellings tucked behind thick vegetation along the slow trickling stream. Trash and soiled clothes outline the public land they've claimed as their own.
We're from Alpha Project.
They're wary of visitors. Some are alcoholics or mentally ill. Others prefer the solitary lifestyle. A few see the river as a place to live while they recover after losing a job.
How you doing, sir?
All right, how you doing?
Oh, good. We just came by to see if you guys need any food, snacks, or assistance.
Smith estimates 500 people live along the 52-mile river, which after 4 years of drought appears in some sections as more of a long, stagnant puddle. But history shows when heavy rains fall, it can quickly transform into an overflowing, raging torrent, washing away everything in its path.
We always stress that river rescues are the most dangerous. We're very used to dealing with ocean currents, and we're very comfortable in the ocean, but when you're in a river, it's just moving all the time, same direction, there's no let up.
Lieutenant John Sandmeyer is leader of the San Diego Fire Department's river rescue team. He recently told county leaders about his concerns. He says his team is working diligently to train other emergency crews for flood rescues.
We do feel that if we get a few days in a row of rain and then repeated week to week this winter, it's going to really stress this system and our network of responders.
Along the river, Smith is warning homeless people of their potential risk from El Niño.
How you doing, sir? My name is Brandon. The El Niño season's coming up, so there's going to be a lot of bad rain shower and stuff like that, so we want to make sure everybody's notified in the riverbed so that we don't have any casualties over the falls.
He offers housing referrals, but options are slim. He says the encampments are evidence of San Diego's limited shelter space. A recent count found 8,700 homeless people in San Diego County. About half were sleeping outdoors. 131 were children under the age of 18.
If the inn is full, then we do turn people away, and we try to get to them as quickly as we can, and we also assess their vulnerability out there.
Jim Vargas is president and CEO of Father Joe's Villages in downtown San Diego. The nonprofit shelters 1,500 people each night, including 350 beds that replaced the city's 2 winter tents. Vargas says many more people are on a waiting list. He's noticed the population boom.
We're seeing it in our lines, in those who come to us. We're seeing it in those who have to wait longer as a result.
Vargas says he's concerned about the El Niño forecast and those without shelter. He's working with other faith communities to secure more emergency beds.
Maybe they have parish halls and they can make them available when it really gets bad out there. So we're trying to all band together in order to add up those numbers.
Vargas opens his 2 dining halls during cold winter storms to accommodate 200 additional people.
This is our dining room, one of our dining rooms. In the evening, when there is bad weather, what we do is we convert it into an overnight shelter. We do that with our other dining room as well.
Still, he says hundreds, if not thousands, will likely have to endure the potentially treacherous conditions on the streets. Terrence Livingston has done it.
Heat, cold, weather, wet, rain, wind. It's very hard out here.
Livingston was homeless for 3 years after he and his wife became buried in medical bills from her cancer treatment. They're now residents at St. Vincent de Paul. Livingston worries about those who aren't so lucky.
You're going to be wet constantly. There's a lot of people that's going to be sick from either a cold, pneumonia, especially the elderly that's out here.
Thank you, sir.
Brandon Smith says his Alpha Project team plans to work around the clock this winter, as they do every year, to keep people safe.
We provide blankets, socks, plastic ponchos. We also give out bedding, like sheets, blankets, things of that nature, so that they can have some sort of covering to cover themselves. Also, we provide tarps.
Forecasters expect El Niño's wet weather to hit the San Diego region as early as next month. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. Another development in the sexual harassment scandal with the former mayor of San Diego. City Council approved a $99,000 settlement with two women who claimed they were sexually harassed by former Mayor Bob Filner 2 years ago. That agreement with a nurse and a former Marine is the third legal settlement with women who accuse Filner of unwanted sexual advances. To vote or not to vote, County Registrar has confirmed the group Citizens for North County has collected enough signatures to challenge a planned development by the strawberry fields at a Carlsbad lagoon. That referendum means Carlsbad Council must now decide whether to repeal its approval of the shopping center or put the project on the ballot for a public vote. A special election could cost the city $500,000. Another look unveiled for the future home of the San Diego Chargers.
The next generation NFL stadium is located in the heart of Mission Valley, and its dramatic forms are remindful of the terrain in which it rests.
That's the voice of the iconic San Diego sportscaster Dick Enberg. There is a stadium initiative to build a new venue at the Mission Valley site. Supporters are trying to get it on next year's ballot. NFL will host a public forum at 7 tomorrow night at Spreckles Theater downtown to get feedback from neighbors. We first told you about the World Health Organization declaring processed meat a carcinogen. As Peggy Pico explains, it doesn't mean it poses the same risk as smoking a cigarette.
Processed meat includes foods like hot dogs, salami, bacon, and deli meat. The World Health Organization report says eating roughly 2 ounces, or about 1 hot dog or 3 slices of bologna a day, can increase the risk of colon cancer. Here to help put these findings into context is registered dietitian Christine Zumas, director of the Healthy Eating Program at UC San Diego Moores Cancer Center. And Christine, for years doctors have been saying reduce your red meat and your processed meat consumption. So what's significant about this report?
Well, this report, everything that we've heard has been from national organizations. This report was from the World Health Organization, or an agency within the World Health Organization. So they took 22 experts, independent experts from 10 different countries, and they looked at about 800 different studies. And when they looked at these studies, they evaluated them for the strength of the evidence. And so what makes this different is they actually came and said that processed meat is causing cancer. So although we knew there was always a relationship, the difference is we have now processed meat in the same category as tobacco and alcohol.
And I want to come back to that in a moment, but before you do, was there a reason? Was the World Health Organization able to determine if it was the processed meat or cooking the processed meat? Do they know why it increased the risk?
It's more in the processing of meat. When you process meat, like salt it or cure it or add nitrates, you're actually creating carcinogens. When you process meat, you really want to improve the flavor, but you want to extend the shelf life. And when you do something like that to extend the shelf life with this processing, you're going to create carcinogens, but also change the composition of the meat. So it's everything that goes into it. And they did not find any conclusive evidence that this one thing is the cause of cancer. It's more just of the processing of the meat.
Okay, we'll put this in perspective for us, because as you mentioned, they put it in the same category as smoking tobacco or asbestos risk, things like that. But it's not the same.
No, their job was to measure the evidence, the strength of the evidence that it causes cancer, and that's what they did. But what they did not do is measure the risk behind it. So even though it causes cancer, it might not be that strong of a risk. In fact, it's not much of a risk at all. Nothing like tobacco or alcohol.
So if it increased your risk maybe by a % or 2, not by this massive amount. Yes. I see. And the report also said that red meat probably causes cancer. What was the link there, and why the probably?
Again, a lot of the research on red meat consumption and cancer is epidemiological, which is done by observation. And because of that, that leaves room for bias or other compounding factors, and it allows a little misinterpretation. So although they have it, they had to say there's limited evidence in cancer with humans.
In a written response, the North American Meat Institute listed several nutritional facts about meat. They said that meat is nutrient dense and contains iron, zinc, and vitamins B6, B12, and D3. They say it's a complete protein containing all of the amino acids needed in the body, and animal products are, quote, the only natural source of vitamin B12. So is there a healthy way to eat meat?
Absolutely. What this does not say is that you should avoid red meat. What you should do is you should look at your consumption of red meat. The American Institute of Cancer Research says that there really hasn't been any evidence seen that eating under 18 ounces of red meat will cause cancer. So this will still allow you to enjoy red meat. Now, red meat, there's a difference between red meat, so you want to go for the lower fat red meats, so the leaner red meats.
So dietary guidelines in regards to cancer risk are what when it comes to processed and red meat?
Well, for the American Institute of Cancer Research, they say to limit red meat and then also avoid processed meat. American Cancer Society says to limit processed meat and limit red meat consumption.
How do you think this declaration by the World Health Organization may affect food policy in the U.S.?
I'm not really sure because we have it there. I think maybe what it will do is highlight what we've already had and maybe invite funding for other types of research that might be more definitive, like clinical trials.
All right. Christine Zumas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Protecting kids from vaping, a new poll out shows most Californians support more regulations on e-cigarettes, including taxes. 74% of those polled say they want public education, research programs, and law enforcement to be funded with taxes on e-cigarettes and other vaping products. The study found support from smokers for e-cigarette regulations. Pay up. Anthem Blue Cross has agreed to refund California consumers $8.3 million to settle 2 lawsuits. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says consumers accused Blue Cross of using bait and switch tactics back in 2011.
Anthem sent a letter to 50,000 individual policyholders in mid-2011. The letter announced that Anthem was raising their deductible and copay and could make future changes in benefits with 30 days' notice. Plaintiffs' attorneys argued that's illegal. They said insurers cannot unilaterally change the terms of a contract in midstream. By settling the cases, Anthem has agreed to no longer make mid-year cost or benefit changes. Affected policyholders will get a refund check in December, averaging $167. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
The state's ongoing drought hitting Halloween. Farmers say they're seeing smaller pumpkins this year because they had to cut back on water. Farmers had to cut down on watering thirsty crops due to state-imposed water restrictions going into the 5th year of drought. They're also blaming warm autumn temperatures. Some California farmers have imported 40 to 50-pound pumpkins all the way from Oregon to satisfy demand. Worker shortages forcing San Diego farmers to change gears. That's what the San Diego Union Tribune reports. Peggy Pico finds out what may be behind the reduction of migrant farm workers.
Half of the nation's fruits and vegetables are produced right here in California, but an ongoing farm worker shortage could change that. Here to explain how is my guest, Eric Larson, Executive Director of San Diego County's Farm Bureau. And Eric, the farm worker shortage has been going on for some time now. When did it start?
Well, we could trace this back to the 1980s, the last time we had any reasonable immigration reform that allowed new farm workers to come into the country. And so that farm worker force has been aging out of the system. And so as they get older, we really haven't backfilled and brought more workers into the country. So it's been ongoing for a number of years.
What's the extent of the shortage right now? How many workers work on local farms here, and how many do we need?
Yeah, well, we have about 10 to 12,000 workers in San Diego County. That shortage might be maybe 20–25%, but it can make a real big difference because a farmer who, let's say, is picking avocados in a very narrow window may not be able to find the workers to hit the market that they need. So even though the number isn't huge, it really impacts the ability to get to market when farmers need to.
Well, you said one of the reasons may be that not as many immigrants are coming here. Are there other reasons, do you think?
Well, the immigration issue is huge because people who are coming here are coming, if they are getting here, they're being smuggled across the border. They may not have the documents that they need to work here. So, but it is that aging workforce and increased security on the border. We put those things together and it has just shrunk the workforce.
How much of the state farm workers population would be classified as here working illegally?
Yeah, we really can't tell you exactly what it is, but in surveys with farm workers, we've learned nationwide more than half of our farm worker force is working with documents that don't actually belong to them. So those documents might belong to a brother, an uncle, a cousin, or maybe they're just a forged document. But nonetheless, more than half, and that creates a lot of insecurity for the farmers.
What are farmers in San Diego County doing to work around this shortage?
Well, unfortunately, some of them are planting less and looking forward and saying, well, if I can't get enough farm workers to take care of this particular crop, maybe I'll do less or change something. But on the inventive side, they're trying to do more with less and doing the best they can because the reality is they still have to get the crop planted and they still have to get it harvested.
Are there any recruitment efforts underway both here in the U.S. and in Mexico, let's say, to get more workers here?
Well, even if we could do that, the law does not allow it. And so we cannot go into Mexico and bring workers here unless we're in a special program called H-2A that just is cumbersome and doesn't really work for San Diego. So what we really need is immigration reform that allows some quantified number of workers to come to the United States to cover that shortage.
Do you think if the salaries were raised, if wages were raised among farm workers, that then maybe perhaps American farm workers would want to do the work?
Yeah, the stark reality is that farmers can only pay so much. It's a world marketplace. It's very difficult to compete in that marketplace now. For instance, 80% of the avocados we consume in this country come from Mexico. It would take very little from Mexico to overwhelm San Diego avocado production, and that could happen just by farmers having to raise wages a little bit, and then they're no longer competitive.
Now, there is a temporary agriculture visa program that allows farmers to bring workers in from Mexico that you were talking about. How effective do you think that is?
Well, it's really designed for large-scale farms because it takes a lot of sophistication, a lot of paperwork. You have to provide transportation, meals, housing for those workers. A place like San Diego, where we really have a large number of small farms, we're very parcelized, the program doesn't work for us. It's a bad fit. And so unfortunately, even though there is a program, a lot of people want to point to it, it just doesn't work for our small farms.
Do any of the immigration reform measures that are stalled in Congress right now, do they address the migrant farm worker issues?
Well, first of all, we would like to see some kind of comprehensive reform, but the farm community has pushed for a long time for a program that would allow an identified number of people. We'd quantify how many workers we need, make sure those workers haven't broken the law, taking English classes, paid any penalties or fine, paid their taxes, then let them come here and work, and then travel back to Mexico once the work is done. That's the kind of reforms we've asked for, but there just seems to be no appetite for immigration reform of any manner in Washington.
Eric Larson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next news hour. How vulnerable is our electric grid to cyber attack? Ted Koppel explores the scary potential in a new book, Tuesday on the PBS NewsHour.
Tapping into all the emotions inside an airport, a legendary ensemble will perform at San Diego International tonight. The group is called Bang on a Can All-Stars. They're presenting Brian Eno's iconic ambient album, Music for Airports. They have performed it at other airports around the world. This is the first time they're doing it at a U.S. airport. Partnering up, dental professionals and some San Diego Chargers players volunteered to help improve the smiles of hundreds of underserved kids in our community. Upbeat music, dancing with Chargers cheerleaders, and getting your picture taken with players. Have you ever seen or heard kids so happy to visit the dentist just days before Halloween?
Do not eat candy or you will get cavities like me.
Good advice from 9-year-old Camila Luna, who says she has at least one cavity. Team Smile is a national nonprofit program with hundreds of volunteers. It started a few years ago in Kansas City, where a dentist heard the case of a boy who died as the result of an untreated abscess tooth. The program now partners with dental organizations and pro sports teams across the country. Christy Conway says it's a full-service event for kids who otherwise couldn't afford it.
Sealants, cavities, teeth pulled, you name it, everything's going to be done. And if their teeth are looking great, then we'll go over to our hygiene department, where all of our hygienists will clean their teeth and give them a great goodie bag to say thanks for coming today.
In addition to getting your teeth checked, this event may also encourage someone like 9-year-old Jessica Sanchez to become a dentist someday. Listen to this advice.
I just suggest that they take care of their teeth and to not eat too much sugar.
It's the second year Team Smile has come to San Diego. About 300 kids were treated at the Chargers Club Lounge. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.